Karoline believed teasing Jasmine Crockett's mother might earn a laugh until Jasmine answered with a story so powerful it caused Karoline leave the stage. There were 8 chairs positioned on the stage in Austin, each thoughtfully chosen. It was a forum on youth policy named Tomorrow's Leaders. Today's Choices, hosted by a nearby think tank and streamed live on 3 platforms. The panel was created to blend young voices with seasoned leaders. A place to discuss ideas, share visions, and possibly go viral. Jasmine Crockett sat near the middle, legs crossed, blazer tidy, notes in her lap untouched. She seldom needed them. Known for her calmness and precision, she realized early on that being the only black woman in a room didn't mean being loud. It meant being undeniable. To her left sat Karoline Leavitt, younger, clearly eager, and known for sharp political quips meant to provoke a reaction. Her smile dared disagreement. She wasn't rude, but she often pushed boundaries, especially in front of cameras. The moderator, a graying radio host from Waco, began with standard questions. Education policy, youth violence, social media impact. Most answers were predictable, filled with phrases like, "We need to have the conversation," or, "Let's bring people to the table." Then came a pivot. "We've been talking about young people," he said. "But what about the values they inherit? Where do they come from? What did your parents teach you about leadership?" A simple question, but one that carries more weight when identity is involved. Karoline grabbed the mic first. "I come from strong stock," she said with a soft chuckle. "My parents are small business owners in New Hampshire. They taught me to speak my mind and never apologize for it." Jasmine didn't flinch. She knew what was coming. Then Karoline turned to Jasmine, her grin not reaching her eyes, and said, "So, Jasmine, where's your mom from?" "Africa." The room reacted, but not with laughter. A few unsure chuckles. Some looked down. The moderator blinked, unsure whether to intervene. Cameras shifted, sensing tension. Jasmine turned slowly to Karoline, not to confront, but to see her fully, not the version on camera, but the person who thought that comment was harmless in front of journalists, students, and elected officials. Before Jasmine could speak, someone else moved. At the back of the room, beyond the audience and tech crew, a woman stood quietly, alone, maroon shawl over her shoulders, streaks of silver in her hair. She hadn't needed attention earlier. She didn't speak or glare. She simply stood, and the presence in the room shifted immediately. Everyone looked, not at Karoline or Jasmine, but at the woman standing silently. Jasmine didn't turn. She already knew. It was her mother. The same woman who attended every debate meeting in high school, who worked 3 jobs while ironing her daughter's shirts at 2 a.m. The woman who taught her, "Make them listen without raising your voice." The silence stretched. Karoline, suddenly unsure, adjusted in her seat and cleared her throat. Jasmine finally lifted the mic. Her words would silence the room and make Karoline regret speaking. The shift was palpable. The silence wasn't empty. It was alive, focused. People were still watching Jasmine's mother, standing quietly like a figure from history come to life. Jasmine held the mic and spoke slowly. "I could answer your question," she said steady. "But that would mean accepting the way you asked it." Karoline's smile thinned. Her hands clenched in her lap. "You asked where my mother is from," Jasmine continued. "Not because you care about her story, but because you thought it would diminish mine." The moderator stayed still. Jasmine's voice remained firm. "She's from Tuskegee, Alabama? Not Africa, though. If she were, I'd say it with pride. But you asked because you assumed she didn't belong in this conversation." The audience leaned in. She continued, "Her mother cleaned houses in high school to support her siblings. Jasmine waited tables where she was made to use the back entrance. She worked night shifts as a nurse while volunteering for PTA meetings." The crowd absorbed every word. Finally, Jasmine turned her head toward the back of the room. Her mother stood proud, silent. "That woman," Jasmine said, "taught me that dignity doesn't require a stage, a mic, or even a response." Karoline laughed nervously, out of sync with the moment. Jasmine's mother had survived hardship, so Jasmine could sit in that chair and answer foolish questions with real stories, reminding everyone that identity isn't defined by zip codes, skin tone, or performance for the already convinced. "She's not from Africa," Jasmine said. "She's from strength." The room understood. This wasn't a clapback. It was clarity. The kind that strips away pretense. Karoline reached for her water, knocking it slightly. A soft clink echoed. Her attempt at a chuckle fell flat. It wasn't cruelty that stopped her. It was truth. An older panelist from Fort Worth nodded subtly in respect. The moderator tried to pivot. "Thank you for sharing, Congresswoman." But Jasmine wasn't done. Her grip on the mic was steady, calm. "Panels love to talk about diversity, especially when cameras are rolling," she said, addressing the audience. "They want us here, but they don't want to be changed by what we say. Questions like that aren't jokes. They're tests of boundaries, assuming I won't respond in a way that makes you uncomfortable." Her words pressed, leaving an imprint. "My mother used to say, 'Your silence will be misunderstood more than your voice will ever be respected.' But she also said, 'Choose the moment to speak. Make it count.'" A young student in the front row whispered to his friend, "This is real. I'm not here to be liked or to make everyone comfortable. I'm here because I earned this seat and my mother sacrificed for it. When someone reduces her story to a punchline, I owe her more than silence." She looked at Karoline again. That woman standing back there wasn't born with much, but she had a spine of steel. "She raised me in a house with few comforts, but with books, values, and real conversations. That's leadership, not tweets or one-liners. But knowing when to speak and when silence says enough." One person clapped, then a few more. It wasn't loud, but it was honest. Jasmine raised her hand to quiet them. "Don't clap for me," she said. "Clap for her. She's the reason I'm here." The attention returned to the woman still standing, silent and proud. She still hadn't moved, but now her presence felt different. Not just quiet strength, but something almost sacred. Jasmine's tone softened slightly as she shared her experiences. Walking miles to school, working as a teen, and sending half her pay home to support her grandmother, facing men who underestimated her, and women who tried to confine her. Yet she never stopped showing up. Karoline hadn't spoken. Her expression was unreadable, not angry, not smug, just uncertain, like someone realizing they had entered a moment they couldn't control. "That's what today's youth need," Jasmine said, returning to the point. "Not just plans, programs, and promises, but real role models. People who don't flinch when someone tries to diminish them, people who carry legacy without resentment." She leaned back slightly. "I didn't come here to teach a lesson," she said. "But sometimes the lesson finds you, whether you're ready or not." The most powerful part wasn't just what Jasmine said. It was what she was about to reveal about her mother's past. Something no one expected. Jasmine paused, holding the mic, but not speaking. The weight of her story needed space. She looked at her mother, still standing. "She's quiet now," Jasmine said, "but she wasn't always." A few people leaned in. It felt like watching someone unlock a door you hadn't realized was closed. "My mother, Alpha Josephine Grant, grew up in Tuskegee," Jasmine began. In the 1960s, she attended a school where her textbooks were hand-me-downs from the all-white school across town. She told me about a book she got in 3rd grade labeled Property of Jefferson High with torn pages and answers already scribbled in. She read it twice without complaint. She was 12 when she saw my grandfather turned away from voting, not because he wasn't eligible, but because they falsely claimed the polls had closed. She told me, "You'll vote for the both of us one day." Her voice cracked slightly, human and real, but she didn't stop. At 16, she marched in Montgomery, not for headlines, but because her school cafeteria ran out of milk for black students 3 days a week, while the white school down the street had extras to throw away. People stopped shifting in their chairs. Jasmine placed a mic on her lap, then picked it back up. She married young. "My father was in the army and passed when I was 8. She never remarried. She worked nights and weekends. People talk about single mothers being strong, but it wasn't a choice. It was survival." She glanced at Karoline briefly. Her mother never asked for recognition. She did it because the world wasn't built for people like her to succeed, but she made sure her daughter had a chance anyway. The moderator stayed silent, letting her story flow uninterrupted. "She taught me to check the oil in a car, to argue my way through a tough classroom. She told me, always tell your story before someone else tells it for you. That's why I'm speaking now." Jasmine paused. "Not for drama. I know how it feels when someone makes what they think is a harmless joke. They wait for you to flinch, then try to make you feel like the problem for not laughing. We've done that too long. Letting it slide, dimming ourselves." Her eyes met her mother's, who finally moved slightly. She lowered her head in acknowledgement. No approval, just recognition of the quiet strength that had been passed down. The biggest protest my mother ever made was to keep showing up fully herself without apology. The audience leaned in. Even those there for politics were captivated by something deeply personal. She never wanted me to be angry, Jasmine continued. I wanted me to be clear about who I am, where I come from, and why I never let people like you. She gestured toward Karoline, tried to shrink my story for their amusement. Jasmine paused again, preparing to share a truth that spanned generations. There's this idea that ignorance gets a free pass if it comes as a joke. Some call it humor or sarcasm. They say, relax. It's not that deep, but it is because people like my mother live with the consequences of those jokes. Karoline tried to meet her gaze, but looked away. I've been in rooms where men asked me where I learned to speak so well. At dinners, someone called my braids urban chic. And in those moments, I had to decide, speak up or keep the peace. We make that choice every day. But silence isn't peace. Silence is permission. A murmur ran through the crowd. Jasmine leaned forward. You weren't looking for an answer, she said to Karoline. You wanted a reaction, something bold to share. Boldness isn't saying something offensive and waiting for applause. Boldness is owning your words even when they fall flat. The audience shifted, some looking at Karoline, others avoiding her gaze. I'm not here to cancel you, Jasmine said. I don't need you to apologize. What we need is for you to understand that your joke landed on a history you don't carry. Karoline sat tensely, glancing at the moderator before looking down. Raising a daughter in a world that pretends to be post-racial is hard, Jasmine continued. But what's harder is watching someone reduce your mother's life to a punchline for attention. The room was silent. I didn't come here to be seen, Jasmine said, looking toward the back. But now that she's standing, I want everyone to remember her. A woman who spoke without words, but said everything. Her tone was gentle, firm, unshaken. You can disagree with my politics, she said. That's expected, but when you attack someone's roots, you're not debating policy. You're asking people like me to prove we belong. A panelist quietly set his mic down. Jasmine continued. You don't need to raise your voice to hold your ground or clap back to reclaim your place. You just tell the truth and let it resonate where it needs to. A woman in the audience wiped her eyes, moved not by sadness, but by realization. I'm not here to make you feel bad. Jasmine addressed Karoline directly. But I do hope you feel something. If you don't, we haven't gone anywhere. The silence in the room deepened. Jasmine didn't shout, but her truth filled the space. Even the moderator sat still, pen frozen. Karoline's usual confidence faltered, replaced by hesitation. Jasmine glanced at her mother again. Alpha's quiet presence anchored the entire event. Some might say I'm being too sensitive, Jasmine said. They'd say just laugh it off. But that's how these things continue unchecked. Heads nodded. The audience was no longer watching. They were listening. Fully. I've spent years walking into rooms like this, Jasmine began, where I knew I would have to work twice as hard just to be seen as capable. On top of that, I had to endure sideways remarks, coded language, and fake compliments disguised as questions. She paused, letting her words sink in. I don't need pity. I don't want applause. I want accountability. I want honesty about the impact of jokes that carry weight. Karoline picked up her pen, likely trying to appear busy, but the room noticed. That's the thing. When you're used to controlling the narrative, it's hard to stay quiet when it turns on you. Someone in the audience raised their phone, not for clout, but because they knew they were witnessing something important. A young woman near the aisle whispered to her friend. That's leadership. Jasmine glanced at the panelist from San Diego. The one who had gently given up his mic earlier. You don't have to be loud to change a room, she said. You just have to mean what you say and understand the weight behind it. Then she turned back to Karoline. Her voice was firm, not cruel. I'm not asking you to apologize to me, she said. That would be too easy. I'm asking you to think about the space you occupy and how you use your platform. One sentence from you can either reinforce years of stereotypes or challenge them. Karoline didn't respond. She gave a slight nod, more a reflex than acknowledgement, as if realizing the moment had moved on without her. The moderator cleared his throat, attempting to regain control. "Let's open the floor for questions from the audience," he suggested, but Jasmine leaned forward. "Before we do," she said, "I want to say one more thing." The moderator stepped back and the room waited. "We talk a lot about being future-focused," Jasmine continued. "We tell young people to dream big, to speak up, to lead. But what example are we really setting if the minute they walk into the room, we still try to box them in with ignorance disguised as humor?" Her words hit harder than anything said before. A few people clapped louder this time while others sat still processing. "We cannot keep saying you can be anything while laughing at where people come from. That isn't leadership."